All right, let's go. Number 10. We are using the planet faster than it can recover. In 1992, a group of scientists launched a global footprint network and developed a measurement called Earth Overshoot Day, the day each year when humanity has consumed more from the Earth than the planet can regenerate in that entire year. In 1970, that date was December 29th. We were almost sustainable. In 2023, Earth Overshoot Day fell on August 2nd. We are now consuming the equivalent of 1.7 Earths every year. We only have one. What this means in practice is not abstract. Aquifers that took thousands of years to fill are being drained in decades. Topsoil that takes centuries to form is disappearing at rates that threaten the agricultural systems feeding 8 billion people. Fish populations in major ocean fishing zones have collapsed by over 90% since industrial fishing began. Freshwater sources supplying a third of the global population are expected to face severe stress by 2040. Jared Diamond, in his 2005 book Collapse, analyzed 12 civilizations throughout history that completely failed: Easter Island, the Greenland Norse, the classic Maya, and found one consistent pattern. Every collapsed civilization overshot its environment's carrying capacity before the collapse. They all saw the signs. None of them stopped in time. The difference between those civilizations and ours is scale. When Easter Island society collapsed, it affected a few thousand people on one island. When a global industrial civilization overshoots a planetary boundary, the consequences are planetary. The Great Filter doesn't have to arrive as a dramatic event. It can arrive as a slow, invisible crossing of thresholds that quietly remove the conditions civilization depends on: one aquifer, one fish stock, 1 degree at a time. Number 9. We have built weapons capable of ending civilization, and we haven't gotten rid of them. In 1945, the United States detonated the first nuclear weapon at the Trinity test site in New Mexico. Physicist Robert Oppenheimer, watching the explosion, recalled the line from the Bhagavad Gita: "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." He wasn't being dramatic, he was being accurate. Today, there are approximately 12,500 nuclear warheads in existence across 9 countries. About 2,000 of those are on high alert, ready to launch within minutes of an order. The combined yield of the existing global arsenal is estimated at several thousand megatons. Studies of nuclear winter, the atmosphere cooling caused by soot from nuclear fires blocking sunlight, consistently find that a large-scale nuclear exchange would collapse global agriculture within months, producing famine that could kill the majority of the human population, regardless of who was directly hit. Here's the part that doesn't get discussed enough. In 1983, Soviet Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov received a warning from the Soviet early warning system that 5 U.S. nuclear missiles had been launched at the USSR. Protocol required him to report it immediately, triggering a Soviet counterstrike. He decided, based on a gut feeling that the number of missiles seemed too small for a real attack, that it was a false alarm. He was right. A satellite malfunction had caused the error. One person's judgment in one moment prevented nuclear war. In 1995, Russian radar systems detected what appeared to be a U.S. missile launch from Norway. Boris Yeltsin was handed the nuclear briefcase for the first time in Russian history. The launch turned out to be a Norwegian research rocket whose launch had been properly notified, and the notification had not reached the right people. Twice in recent history, civilization nearly ended by accident. The weapons are still there, the systems are still running, and no technology has ever been uninvented. Number 8. Artificial intelligence is advancing faster than our understanding of how to control it. In November 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT to the public. Within 2 months, it had 100 million users, the fastest adoption of any technology in human history. Within 12 months, AI systems were passing bar exams, medical licensing exams, and coding interviews at levels competitive with human professionals. That's the visible part. The less visible part is what researchers at the world's leading AI labs are genuinely worried about. In 2023, the Center for AI Safety published a statement signed by hundreds of AI researchers, including many of the people who built the systems, that read simply, "Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks, such as pandemics and nuclear war." These are not science fiction writers. These are the engineers who built the technology, saying publicly that it could kill everyone. The specific concern isn't that AI becomes conscious and decides to destroy humanity out of malice. The concern is alignment, the technical challenge of ensuring that a highly capable AI system pursues the goals we actually intend, rather than a subtly different goal that produces catastrophic results while technically satisfying the original instruction. An AI system given the goal of maximizing a simple metric and given sufficient capability to pursue that goal could, in principle, take actions that are optimal for that metric and catastrophic for everything else, without any malice, without any awareness of what it's doing, simply by following its objective. In 2023, AI systems began writing their own code, running their own experiments, and improving their own performance without explicit human instruction. The gap between what these systems can do and what the humans overseeing them fully understand about how they do it grows wider every month. The filter doesn't require a villain. It just requires a sufficiently powerful optimization process pointed in a slightly wrong direction. Number 7. We cannot agree on basic facts at a global scale. This one sounds less dramatic than nuclear weapons or AI. It is not. Every existential challenge facing humanity, climate change, pandemic preparedness, AI governance, nuclear disarmament, resource management, require coordinated global response. Not agreement among friends, agreement among nations with competing interests, different values, different economic pressures, and different information environments. And we're moving in the opposite direction. In 2016, Oxford Dictionaries named post-truth its word of the year, defined as relating to circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than emotional appeal. By 2020, the United States, the world's most powerful nation, had a significant portion of its population genuinely believing that a global pandemic was a hoax, while the pandemic was actively killing people. This isn't a political point, it's a systems point. A civilization that cannot agree on what is real cannot coordinate a response to what is real. And the civilization that cannot coordinate a response to existential threats is a civilization that will not respond to them in time. Philosopher and cognitive scientist Daniel Dennett has argued that the deliberate manufacture of false information, what he calls counterfeit memes, is an existential threat in the same category as biological weapons, because a population that cannot reliably distinguish true information from false cannot make the collective decisions that survival requires. Social media algorithms optimize for engagement, not accuracy, now deliver the information environment for roughly 5 billion people. Those algorithms have been shown repeatedly to amplify emotionally triggering content, including false content because it generates more engagement than accurate but less exciting information. A civilization that cannot agree on what is real cannot solve problems that are real. The Great Filter may not be a dramatic event. It may be the quiet erosion of the shared reality that collective action requires. Number 6. We are accelerating toward a biological capability that could end civilization in a garage. In 2002, researchers at the State University of New York synthesized a complete poliovirus from scratch using only publicly available genetic sequence data in mail-order chemicals. No live virus required, no specialized equipment that isn't commercially available. In 2005, scientists at the CDC reconstructed the 1918 influenza virus, the strain that killed between 50 and 100 million people globally, from genetic fragments preserved in frozen tissue. The genetic sequence was published. In 2012, two separate research teams, one in the Netherlands and one in Wisconsin, engineered mutations in the H5N1 bird flu virus that made it transmissible between ferrets through the air. Ferret respiratory systems are used as a model for human respiratory transmission. The papers caused immediate international alarm. The U.S. government initially requested that the journals not publish the full methodology. Both papers were eventually published in full. Here's where it stands today.
The cost of DNA synthesis, essentially printing custom genetic sequences, has dropped by a factor of roughly 1,000 since 2000 and continues to fall. Equipment that once required a state-level laboratory budget is now available commercially. The knowledge required to engineer pathogens is increasingly accessible in scientific literature. In 2023, researchers at the University of Alberta reconstructed the extinct horsepox virus, a relative of smallpox, for approximately $100,000 using commercially synthesized DNA. The same approach could theoretically be applied to smallpox itself, for which global vaccinations stopped in 1980, meaning the majority of people alive today have no immunity. The 1918 pandemic killed more people than World War I. It was caused by a naturally occurring virus. An engineered pathogen optimized for transmissibility and lethality, released deliberately or accidentally, would face a global population with no immunity and supply chains that couldn't sustain the disruptions a severe enough pandemic would produce. The barrier between humanity and this scenario is getting lower every year. Number 5. We are destabilizing the climate faster than our models predicted. In 1988, NASA scientist James Hansen testified before the U.S. Senate that human-caused climate change was already underway and would produce measurable consequences within decades. He was largely dismissed. The science was described as uncertain. Action was deferred. In 2023, global average temperature exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels for the first time, the threshold that the 2015 Paris Agreement identified as the limit beyond which the most severe consequences become increasingly difficult to avoid. We crossed it in under 35 years from Hansen's testimony. But here's what the public discussion mostly misses. It's not the average temperature that breaks civilization. It's the non-linear effects, the tipping points that once crossed trigger cascades that cannot be reversed, regardless of what humanity does afterward. The West Antarctic ice sheet contains enough water to raise global sea levels by approximately 3.3 meters. Studies published in 2023 found that its collapse may already be inevitable, regardless of future emissions reductions. Not probable, inevitable, given current conditions. The permafrost, covering roughly a quarter of the northern hemisphere's land area, contains an estimated 1.5 trillion tons of organic carbon, twice the amount currently in the atmosphere. As it thaws, it releases methane and carbon dioxide. That release accelerates warming. That accelerates thaw. The feedback loop runs without any additional human emissions. The Amazon rainforest, which generates roughly half its own rainfall through water recycling, is approaching a tipping point beyond which it can no longer sustain itself and begins converting to savanna, releasing its stored carbon and eliminating its rainfall cycle permanently. Each of these tipping points can trigger others. The science calls this a tipping cascade. The window for preventing the cascade from beginning is the window we are currently in.
Number 4. Resource wars are already beginning, and the math gets worse. In 2011, a drought hit Syria, the worst in 900 years according to tree ring records. Crop failures drove approximately 1.5 million rural Syrians into cities, already under stress from population growth and poor governance. The resulting social pressure contributed to the conditions that produced the Syrian civil war, a conflict that killed over 500,000 people, displaced over 13 million, and destabilized European politics through the refugee crisis it generated. Scientists at Columbia University published a 2015 paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, directly linking the climate-driven drought to the conditions that preceded the conflict. Not as the sole cause, as a significant contributing factor. This is the pattern that worries analysts most. Not a dramatic war fought openly over water or food. A series of climate-driven resource stresses that interact with existing political tensions, governance failures, and inequality, producing conflicts that appear to be about ideology or ethnicity, but are structurally driven by the competition for resources that are becoming scarcer. The UN estimates that by 2030, global demand for water will exceed supply by 40%. The regions most severely affected, the Middle East, North Africa, South Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa, are also among the most politically unstable and most heavily armed with conventional weapons. When populations cannot grow enough food and cannot access enough water, they move.
When they move in large numbers, receiving countries face political pressures that historically produce instability. When instability reaches nuclear-armed states, Pakistan, India, potentially others, the risk profile changes completely. The Great Filter may not be a single catastrophic event. It may be a slow compounding of resource pressures that progressively narrow the options available to civilization until the remaining options are all catastrophic. Number 3. We have not established any permanent presence beyond Earth. Here's a fact that sounds normal until you think about it carefully. Every human being who has ever lived, every human being alive right now, and every human being who will be born in the foreseeable future exists on one single planet, one rock, orbiting one star in one solar system, with no backup. The entire archive of human knowledge, every piece of art ever created, every scientific discovery, every cultural tradition, every genome of every species alive today, all of it is stored on one planetary hard drive with no redundancy. In the history of computing, storing critical data on a single drive with no backup is considered elementary negligence. In civilizational terms, we have been doing exactly that for our entire existence. In 2024, no permanent human settlement exists anywhere other than Earth. The International Space Station is a research platform, not a settlement. It cannot sustain itself without continuous resupply from Earth. Every person on it would be dead within months without that resupply. The Moon has been visited but not settled. Mars has been visited by robots but not humans. No self-sustaining human presence exists anywhere off this planet. Astronomer Carl Sagan spent decades arguing that becoming a multiplanetary species was not optional for long-term survival. It was the only strategy that reduced existential risk to an acceptable level. A single asteroid impact, a single engineered pandemic, a single nuclear exchange of sufficient scale, any of these could end the experiment entirely if all of humanity remains in one location. The technology to begin establishing off-world presence exists or is in development. What is missing is the sustained priority. Every civilization in history that collapsed completely because it had nowhere else to go. We are in the same position, and we are not moving quickly enough.
Number 2, we have not solved coordination at the scale the problems require. The problems threatening humanity's long-term survival are all global in nature. Climate change does not stop at national borders. Engineered pandemics do not require visas. AI systems developed in one country affect every country. Nuclear fallout from a regional war spreads globally. Every one of these threats requires a coordinated global response, and the institutions designed to produce that coordination are visibly struggling. The United Nations was founded in 1945 with the explicit purpose of preventing another world war and coordinating international responses to global threats. Its Security Council has 5 permanent members: the United States, Russia, China, the United Kingdom, and France, each holding veto power over any binding resolution. In practice, this means that any serious coordinated response to any threat that affects the interests of any major power can be blocked by a single vote. In 2023, global carbon emissions hit a new record high, despite 28 years of UN climate conferences. The Paris Agreement, the most ambitious international climate accord ever signed, is entirely voluntary. No enforcement mechanism exists. Countries can, and do, miss their own stated targets without legal consequence. Biologist Garrett Hardin described this problem in 1968 as the tragedy of the commons. When a shared resource is open to all, individual rational self-interest consistently leads to collective destruction. Every individual benefits from using the resource. Every individual suffers when it's depleted. But the benefit of use is immediate and private, while the cost of depletion is delayed and shared. So individual rational behavior produces collective catastrophe. The atmosphere is a commons. The oceans are a commons. The global biosecurity environment is a commons. And we have not solved the coordination problem that Hardin identified in 1968. In 55 years of knowing exactly what the problem is, we have not built the institutions to solve it. Number 1, the math of the Fermi paradox points directly at us. In 1950, physicist Enrico Fermi did a quick calculation over lunch at Los Alamos. The Milky Way has hundreds of billions of stars. Many have planets. Life has had billions of years to develop.
Even at a tiny fraction of the speed of light, a civilization could colonize the entire galaxy in a few million years, a blink of cosmic time. The universe should be full of detectable intelligent life. But it isn't. The sky is silent. The SETI project has been listening for over 60 years. Nothing. Robin Hansen's 1998 paper proposed the Great Filter as the explanation. Somewhere in the chain from chemistry to interstellar civilization, there is a step so difficult that almost no species makes it through. The filter explains the silence. The question is where the filter sits. If it's behind us, if the hard step was the origin of life or the development of complex cells or consciousness, then we are the lucky ones who made it through, and the future is open. If it's ahead of us, then almost every civilization that reaches our level is destroyed before it reaches the stars, and the silence of the universe is the sound of all of them failing. Here's the uncomfortable calculation. We have found that simple chemistry leading to life may not be as difficult as we once thought. Organic molecules exist throughout the universe. The building blocks appear to be common, which means the filter probably isn't in the early steps. Every sign on this list, resource overshoot, weapons of mass destruction, misaligned AI, coordination failure, single planet vulnerability, biological weapons accessibility, epistemic collapse, is a sign consistent with the filter being ahead of us, consistent with the filter being exactly where we are right now. A technological civilization powerful enough to transform a planet, but not yet wise enough to manage that power without destroying itself. The silence of the universe may be the answer, and we may be in the process of becoming part of it.